When I first started getting into Master System collecting a few years ago, no other game intrigued me more than Golden Axe Warrior. The first time I ever saw someone playing it, I was immediately drawn to the game's bright visuals and catchy music. I knew I had to have it, and after looking around for a little while, I finally bought it in a lot of games. That is hands down one of my favorite purchases as a collector. Golden Axe Warrior is an action game with RPG elements that's totally blown my socks off. I started out as a Wii gamer on the original Legend of Zelda for NES and grew up wandering through Hyrule on a regular basis. The things I loved most about Zelda were the exploration and the action, two things that, along with other experiences on the NES, would solidify my love of RPGs going forward. For me, Golden Axe Warrior picks up where Zelda leaves off and goes even further to improve upon virtually every aspect of what made me fall in love with Link's first adventure. The main character in Golden Axe Warrior is on a quest to avenge the death of his parents that have been killed by Death Adder, the main antagonist in the Golden Axe series. There's very little story that unfolds throughout the game, but the goal is clear. Find the 9 crystals, locate Death Adder, slay him, and save the world. The world of Golden Axe Warrior is well populated compared to other games like it. There are towns tucked away in all areas with townspeople that are surprisingly competent speakers. I really appreciated this game's excellent translation. I didn't find myself spending a lot of time scratching my head over the meaning of things like Eastmost Peninsula is the secret or 10th enemy has the bomb. People were often very direct in what they wanted or needed from me, which made progressing through this game a lot easier than other games from this generation. Since I'm used to playing squeaky clean Nintendo games, I found some of the imagery in these towns a little bit on the morbid side, but it was refreshing to be honest. Many regions had been ravaged by Death Adder, and homes had bodies and skeletons lying around with people happy for some conversation only a stone's throw away. This game was able to communicate the direness of Death Adder's regime through visuals without spewing it at me through a bad translation. That was pretty unique given the other contenders in the genre at the time. Fans of other Golden Axe games would be happy to see quite a few cameos of playable characters and enemies from the other games in the series. There were obviously going to be some people out there that weren't exactly pleased with the series' change in direction for this game's release, like this guy who gave the game 42%, saying, "All this has in common with the superb Sega beat-em-up is the title. Golden Axe Warrior is in fact a sprawling medieval RPG with little or no excitement on offer. The one redeeming feature is the size of the game and the battery backup, but in all other departments it's severely lacking, a big disappointment for Golden Axe fans." Even though none of the classic characters are playable, they do have a really important in-game role that I won't spoil here. One of my favorite things about seeing them though was the classic Golden Axe music that played while they talked to you. I wish this music was used elsewhere in the game since it's so good and upbeat, but it did make these character encounters quite special. One of the funniest and simultaneously most frustrating things about other NPCs in this game is how many of them are involved in a horrible underground crime racket. So many people will blatantly rob you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. Horns, the game's currency, are not terribly difficult to come by, but gathering a lot of them can feel like a bit of a slog. They drop randomly along with health and magic restoring items after defeating enemies, and it's likely that you'll need to spend more time than you'd like farming for them. The worst part about these robbers is that they're identical to the people who give you horns. Anytime you stumble upon a person in a secret area, it's a gamble. All you can do is cross your fingers and hope to leave with your shirt. Speaking of secrets, the game is absolutely packed with them. In games like the original Zelda, the annoying process of burning a single tree and leaving the screen before being able to burn another with the blue candle is a thing of the past. Once you find the axe, exploring is as simple as swinging it at everything in sight. Tree chopping is not only therapeutic after being constantly robbed, but it also often yields a secret staircase that can lead not only to more robberies, but also to gifts, people with great hints, or a life or magic meter extension. Practically every screen on the entire map has something to find if you're willing to look for it, and even more secrets can be found after getting items that destroy rocks or other obstacles. Finding secrets in this game felt a lot more straightforward than it did in the original Zelda game. Discovering a way forward in Golden Axe Warrior is much easier than randomly planting bombs and hoping for a secret door to appear when the smoke clears. Another really great thing about this game is how the world slowly unfolds. Unlike other open world games where you can accidentally cross a bridge and be murdered by wyverns, Golden Axe Warrior gradually grants you access to new places as you find items in labyrinths and scales up the difficulty accordingly. You can find things like the rope that allow you to climb to rocky areas or boats that permit your passage across rivers and oceans. The versatility of your tools extends not only to the trials of the overworld, but can also benefit you inside of labyrinths as well. There's nothing more satisfying than sitting in a tiny pool of green ooze water and swinging away at enemies that can't get you when your life meter has virtually been depleted to nothing. I do have to say that finally getting my hands on the magic balloon was very anticlimactic. I was expecting something along the lines of the balloon in Ultima 4 that leaves you at the mercy of the winds and is horrendously difficult to control, but the one found here just allows you to view your world's map in-game and see where you are. Surprisingly, Golden Axe Warrior didn't come with a physical map. This might seem like a big drawback to many, but part of the fun of getting totally immersed in a new fantasy world was being able to map it out in a way that was meaningful to me as the player. Finding the locations of the 9 labyrinths is a whole challenge in itself. Thankfully, there are none that are completely obscured behind rocks or trees, and paying attention to NPCs and following newly opened areas on the overworld after getting new tools are keys to progressing. The labyrinths themselves are filled with puzzles that revolve around opening up new paths. Locked doors and uncrossable chasms are some of the obstacles that stand in your way, and finding keys or discovering triggers to form a bridge or open a door is half the fun in these places. Triggers can be pretty varied. Touching lanterns, defeating all enemies in a room, or breaking certain blocks are just some of the ways new paths can be opened, and in later dungeons you'll be pulling out all the stops to find your way. Some labyrinths also have branching paths, and a good rule of thumb is that if you didn't leave with an item, you very likely missed something. Like the original Zelda, every labyrinth has a new item for you to pick up, which is usually crucial to moving forward after the fact. To me, the labyrinths were the most difficult part of this game. Though I could often find a way forward, the enemies often gave me trouble. By far, some of the worst ones were the red skeletons, the clams, and the mimics. Why does every RPG have to have mimics? These ones are especially mean and very hard to avoid. The very worst enemy has to be the slow-moving crab. Although they're the slowest enemies you'll run across in the entire game, they can rest your armor with only one touch, which essentially destroys all of your defenses. Magical oil can repair your armor, but it's pretty expensive. I often found it easier to reset rather than trying to fight my way back out of a labyrinth to go and buy oil. A very fleshed out aspect of Golden Axe Warrior is the multitude of ways that you can take down your enemies. Your character begins with a sword and gains an axe shortly after beginning the game, and both of these items can be replaced with better versions as the game progresses. Unlike other games where you can buy better weapons and armor, virtually all of your upgrades here are hidden somewhere on the world map. Thankfully, people are often kind enough to tell you roughly where to look, with only a few of the items being unintuitive to uncover late in the game. Offensive magic is a staple in the Golden Axe beat-em-ups, and it's an important tool in this game as well. While the sword and axe are great in melee combat, some of the magic spells that you acquire enable the use of a projectile attack that either damages or freezes your enemies. Magic is also a necessity in puzzle solving, but it was a welcome addition to my arsenal in early stages of the game when I was flabby and weak. For practically my entire life, The Legend of Zelda has been one of my favorite games and still is, but I think Golden Axe Warrior has surpassed it in my books. Golden Axe Warrior was released a few years after Zelda in 1991, and there was a clear jump in visual quality that obviously can't be ignored. This is true of many games on the Master System, but it's really noticeable when comparing Golden Axe Warrior to other similar games on the NES like Dragon Warrior or Final Fantasy. To say that Golden Axe Warrior was influenced by Zelda is the understatement of a lifetime, but the game does build upon the Zelda formula and is very much its own game, incorporating many things to round out the adventure. It blends the towns and magic use of many turn-based RPGs with the excitement of real-time combat, while at the same time making exploration worthwhile and rewarding. I personally haven't felt such a sense of curiosity playing a game like this in a really long time, and no puzzle felt too obscure or cryptic to be a real roadblock, with the exception of where to find new optional items near end game. I never once found myself reaching for a walkthrough, and that says a lot about both the excellent translation and the logic used to build up the game world. This should probably go without saying, but playing Golden Axe Warrior was actually fun. Fun is pretty subjective, but a lot of RPGs from the 8-bit generation, action or otherwise, can feel like work rather than a good time. Things are either horrendously vague, grinding feels like it's never ending, or the difficulty is scaled too high for the game to be enjoyable. A lot of people graciously welcomed many of the quality of life upgrades that came along with newer games in the 16-bit generation and beyond, and for many, going back to 8-bit games isn't very appealing. Golden Axe Warrior is different. I've never had a gaming experience where I felt like I was playing one of my favorite games for the first time all over again, but it was somehow better in virtually every way. Golden Axe Warrior is often dismissed as just another Zelda clone, but it's so much more than that. I truly hope that when people play this game, that they'll recognize it not only as an homage to a beloved game series, but also as a beautiful evolution of a formula that raised expectations for all open-world action RPGs that followed in its footsteps.